Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back, everyone, to the 13th episode of the Growth Street Podcast. I could not be more excited as your host, Darsh Patel, to be sat across, honestly, an icon in the sales space and personal development space, Jaime Diglio. How are you doing?
I'm great. Happy to be here.
I know, it's a pleasure. For me, I'm super excited, again, because we were talking now for a month or two,
Yeah.
and the stars kind of just aligned for you to be here, talk about a lot of things you're learning, and you have a book coming out. So I'd love to
Yes.
hear a bit more about that.
So I do have a book coming out tentatively. Well, no, I shouldn't say tentatively. Coming out the end of August.
Yeah.
Yes.
August 22nd is of right now, so circle your dates. We're
Yeah.
super excited about
I have
it.
more information about that coming up
more
soon.
information coming up soon. We'll talk about
It's
what the
like
book's
crunch
about.
time, right? Right. Yeah.
No, it's cool. I got to getting to be involved in the process. Even you asking me my opinion on the cover, like
Yeah.
for me, that was a pretty cool moment because again, I feel like I'm a creative more than I am maybe like more of a behind the scenes kind of person. So being able to input, I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like always looking for feedback.
Yeah, definitely. I think we settled on a pretty good update from where we started. So from the options of like the Moneyball
Yeah.
and everything,
Yeah.
it was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so kind of leading into your book and talking about that, our agenda for today is we're going to really talk a bit more about who you are, what you've been working on, some of your past experiences, and also the massive treasure chest of wisdom that you had, because I feel like you've learned so much. You've spoken on TED Talk. You're a CEO of your own company now. You work for Microsoft, Gartner, and all these big companies, and I think there's just so much knowledge to be had. And most of my audience is actually 18 to 24. That's the typical age range. So I think most people don't have the opportunity maybe to always be given, at least fed information like this. So that's what excites me, because for me, I tell this to everyone. This is my favorite part of the pod, but my whole job is I get to have this conversation with you.
Right.
But then all of our hundreds and thousands of viewers watching at home get to be part of this too. So I think it's going to be a really special episode.
Yes.
I'm pumped.
Awesome. Well, excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you again. So kind of going into it, I mean, obviously I gave you a little bit of an intro about where you've been, what you've done, but I'd like to hear from yourself, who is Jaime? Like, that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah. Well, that took a while to figure out.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I did my TED Talk, right? Is sort of, it's really challenging when you sort of have this sort of your expectations of yourself, right? I always have said, the expectations, when people put pressure on you, it's minor compared to the pressure we tend to put on ourselves.
That's real.
Right. It's so real.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about it. So I think there's really, and I think it's more challenging for all of you, in your 20s now, because, I grew up, we didn't have social media.
Yeah, no Instagram.
I couldn't see everybody else's edited version of their life.
Yeah.
And now, that's all you see is everybody's, like I say, highlight reel.
Yeah.
And it's not the real.
It's not.
And I think it can just put this additional unrealistic pressure on people to be, succeed in their career, in the title, in the lifestyle, and just what you're seeing, and it's not real. And so we're measuring ourselves against something that's unattainable.
Yeah.
And the other challenge is that we haven't defined what satisfaction is for us.
Yeah.
So when we say sort of like, well, we're not feeling happy or fulfilled in where we are in our career. And when I talk with younger people, and it's not just younger people, it's people of all ages. And I say, well, I appreciate you sharing. What would satisfaction look like? What would that be? And
what do you typically hear what have you like figured out from that question?
That people don't know. They haven't defined it. They haven't defined what satisfaction is. So they're living their life feeling dissatisfied, measuring it against this unrealistic vision of other people's standards that aren't even real. And so the reality is sort of anchoring in, what do you want for you? What would satisfaction be for you?
Yeah.
Not what other people have said satisfaction is, right? So that, I just went on a little bit of a tangent there, but when we say like, who am I? I'm somebody who's continuously figuring it out, right? Like started the beginning of my career. I mean, I look at myself from a young age as a bit of an underdog.
We talked about this when we were getting to know each other. I'm excited.
Yeah. From grade school, where I didn't do really well in school. I specifically, and probably one of the most impactful things for me in my life, looking backwards, was that I had a guidance counselor in elementary school tell my mom that I was, below average in, intellect.
Dang.
Well, she used different language than that, but I'm going to just
that's what she was
basically
saying,
like
yeah.
that I'm as a dummy, and that,
Wow.
not actually worse than that, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into it here. But anyway, so
Some
sort of
guidance counselor. That's
well,
great, yeah.
and sort of this sort of measurement of somebody putting a measurement or sort of a label on you at an early age, and how it's really up to us to define who we are, not let someone else define what our potential or limits.
And I think that's hard too, because I think most people when they're young, I mean, when you hear, let's say you play sports until 6th grade, you're the jock, or you're the kid who plays video games at home, you're the nerd. And it's really, sometimes it's hard to think of yourself as what is different than what everyone else thinks of you.
Right.
So I'm sure when you heard that, it must have stuck with you, because even something that you said in your TED Talk, which I watched over and over, was how 99 people can compliment you and give you support. The one person that says something that really sits with you is what you're going to latch onto. And it's hard to escape that. Even when you talk about the highlight reel thing, I can really resonate, because there's so much you're saying that I can connect with, which is funny, because I think a lot of what we were saying before, we're a lot in common. And I think you have a really good understanding about people that are at least my age. I think maybe in our new generation of the social media world, is it is all a highlight reel. The whole pressure idea, I wonder if we would have less pressure on ourselves, because I tell this to everyone who knows me. I feel there's so much pressure on me. So I always say this.
Yeah.
I'm always like, is that real pressure? I don't know what that is like. But I think a lot of it is because you see all these people, doing great things, and you want to be as successful as you can be, because there are people that you are seeing that are that successful. So it's a weird relationship that I think that you've really understood, which I think most people don't really put 2 and 2 together to figure that out.
Well, and I've learned to understand it, but it took me really being stuck in my own story in my head, right? Which I talk about as my war room, right? The room in our head where we work against results, where we doubt ourselves, we self-sabotage, we focus on our weaknesses, and sort of we can get really stuck there. We can get stuck there for a minute. We can get stuck there for a day. We can get stuck there for a decade,
a decade.
Right? And sort of the story, and how do we reframe? Because the thing that I see repeatedly over and over again, I've worked with people who are, billionaires, right?
Wow.
And at the end of the day, you can have as many accolades and these things that look like success, but if you don't feel, this is the biggest gap that I see for across generations, right? They have all this stuff, but they're empty inside. And they're empty inside because they're searching for something, but they're focusing outward, not looking at, okay, well, who am I? How am I developing myself?
Yeah.
Right? My strength of who I am versus who I think I'm supposed to be.
And how does someone figure that out? How did you figure that out?
I figured it out because I had no choice. And I share in my TED Talk that mine was this in a high pressure job and being a top performer. And stress in our bodies, like nobody talks about this, and sort of the mind body. So if you ever notice, like if you you're working really hard and then all of a sudden you'll get a cold, or you get, some sort of crazy rash, or right? It's stress in our bodies, and we're not taught how to manage our mindsets, which our mindset is sort of that key differentiator for people who want to continue, be top performers.
Yeah.
And nobody talks about this. And so for me, even though I was someone who had advanced, I had studied organizational psychology. So I went and actually got my master's in organizational psychology after my first job out of school. After 9/11,
You went back to do your master's in that.
Because I had lost my job, my first job out of school. I had lost it, and so I started bartending and waitressing, and I actually out of that situation, right? It's sort of like, how do you make lemonade out of lemons?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was waitressing and bartending, feeling sort of sorry for myself, because one day I'm working in New York. I'm like, I work in New York, and I'm like, so I was so cool, and like my career path, and the next thing I know, right? The next thing I know, I got to pay my bills.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting at my desk and literally rolling coins at my computer desk to bring to the Bank of America to put in the bank so I could pay my rent.
Wow.
And my parents really wanted me to move back to Boston. It was right after 9/11. And I was like, nope, I'm going to figure this out.
I'm going to make it,
But my point around this was, so I went back and I think everybody should be a waitress or a bartender or be in some sort of service role, just learning how to deal with people.
Yeah.
But the thing that I took from it was, as I was talking with people over and over again, I would listen to their stories. And this was back in 2001.
Yep.
2001, 2002. And I listened to people's stories, and I became really fascinated by what was it that made some people, when they had hardship, right? Like, what was it that made them stay stuck in that story of, sort of like poor me, right?
What was that?
And so then that, and then what was it that made some people go, okay, well, I'm going to pick myself back up and I'm going to keep going. So this sort of just became an interesting, I didn't know what it was at the time.
Yeah,
I just started to notice the pattern.
Yes, okay.
I started to notice the pattern, and I was like, I'm really interested in learning more about this. And then someone said to me, well, you can actually study it, which is organizational psychology.
Wow, okay.
Understanding someone's, how we're wired, right? How do you motivate and move people?
And organizational means in terms of like companies, or what is organization?
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, organization, technically it's companies, but any sort of corporate structure, group. So any type of group of people, like, how do you get the best out of them?
Yeah.
And so that was actually the catalyst for me to go back to school to learn about understanding how do you understand how to motivate people, and everybody's motivated differently.
Yeah.
The thing about that, and that was why, sort of that underdog, right? It's like I went back to school. I did this, where most people would probably go get an MBA. And I actually had a lot of people say, what are you, like, stupid? Why wouldn't you go get an MBA? Why would you go get a degree in this?
Yeah.
But I had this just like need for understanding, like, hey, we need to understand how people work.
Yeah.
Right? I was super curious about how people work.
And that's all because of this bartending job.
It was all because of going through the hardship of losing my job.
Okay.
And sort of the life pivot and going, okay, well, what can I do here? How can I make this like work?
A positive situation.
Yeah, like how do I take something that is kind of crappy
and make it,
and how do I learn from it?
Yeah.
How do I?
That's a big step too. That's a pretty big step to go back to school to learn this, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that something you could learn. But I went to school for business. My undergrad was in business.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, so my point about this is that, understanding. So I was really effective at understanding how to motivate and move my teams, like how to look for hidden value in people. And sort of how do you bring groups together to help them win, right? So I was able to really do that as an underdog, like that sort of underdog mentality. Like I didn't do well in school, but then I went to a really good college. I was sort of the overweight, shy kid.
Yeah.
And then I ended up being a college soccer player. I was captain of my college soccer team. I was supposed to walk onto the college soccer team, and then I ended up being the captain.
Wow.
So like I have this like theme in my life of sort of like not really a high expectation.
And then slamming it through the...
And then like figuring it out. Like figuring out a way to do it my way.
Yeah, I would say figuring out is not doing it justice, because I would say you really over-exceeded those expectations. To be a captain of your soccer team after being a walk-on, so even like you now, again, I'm sure 20 years ago, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know if you think that you'd be a TED speaker, CEO of your company working with billionaires, a national sales leader from Microsoft. Like, I would say figuring it out is a very light version of what you've really been doing.
Yeah, I mean, but I think the other part about it was that because I was coming at it from maybe sort of like a labeled like disadvantage, it taught me that there was a different way to figure out what can I bring to the table that's different than somebody else. And so finding that was the key. Like I was really good, I think I was good at seeing the potential in other people. I think that's always something I've been good at. But the thing where I was lacking was I didn't fully understand myself.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like I could do it for other people, but I wasn't fully understanding and having an awareness of what is it that I brought to the table? How could I language it? How, I knew I was good at what I did, but I didn't know how to communicate what the heck I was doing. And so that piece was sort of that catalyst of where I burnt out, which is why I'm doing what I do today. burning out of literally losing feeling in my legs.
Yeah, wow,
when I was
really?
at a client meeting.
Wow.
One day just randomly, but it was the stress and anxiety of this pressure of like expectations and life, and everything was being piled on and I didn't know how to manage it. And so I had to figure a way out of it. And, this was back in 2015. So I'd already been sort of a successful.
You already had a successful career at that point.
I had had a successful career, but what I tell people is like, back to what I was saying before, is like
Objectively successful.
I
but
was
not
successful
for
on the
you.
outside, but
Yes.
on the inside, I
You
was
were not-
empty, alone, drowning,
Wow.
feeling like I had
Yeah.
like. And it's funny, I was just doing a draft in the book, and I was rewriting something, and I was saying how it was like. So I remember somebody specifically at that time asking me like, "Well, what do you like to do?" And I was like,
I don't know.
"I don't have anything."
Wow.
And I remember thinking, well, is that weird? Right? That I was like so consumed in work and so consumed in the stress of performing and so I really lost who I was. And I think a lot of people, I know a lot of people experience that because that's why I'm so busy right now with a lot of the clients that I work with. And so what I found was the more I talked about it is how many people, the reason why they're dissatisfied in their career and their life is because they're measuring themselves against everybody else. But they haven't identified their strengths, their values, what they want, the direction they want to go in. And so that's what I help people with. Because if you don't have that foundational footing of what I call, that win room, right? What I need. If you don't know what it is, you can't get out of the war room. Right? You get the war room over here basically saying you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, all the things the world is telling you, fear, right? You're never going to get out of that if you don't define
what you personally need, what I need, the win room.
Right. If you don't know that, and so you have to learn how to stop listening, right, to the stories in your head.
Yeah. So how do you do that though? So that's what I'm curious, because I think people can hear this and really resonate, right? Even myself, I can completely resonate with what you're saying, because it's so easy to be, even myself, right? Starting my own company now, it's so easy to say, I'm so negative on everything. I'm actually losing money every month from this business, things like that. And it's easy to sometimes not look inside and say, well, I'm doing what I love and I'm passionate and I am growing. Things have been looking up. It's easy to, again, the positive versus negative. But what's an actual framework? Because I think you say you have so many clients and you are the CEO of a really successful consulting company in this space.
Yeah.
So what are actual frameworks that you give to people to actually figure this out? I think if someone watching at home might be watching this and saying, oh my God, she can read my mind. She knows exactly how I'm feeling. So to that person who's watching at home, even to me, how does someone figure this out?
Well, the first thing is, number one, it's not like an instant. You can't. It's not like it's not like a life hack.
Damn,
but
I wish it was.
No, I know, and that's part of the problem is that we think everything we want instantaneously, and once we do it once and it doesn't work, we're like, all right, we throw it away. That's not how it works, right? It's like we talk about any top athletes. It's practice. It's creating practices. So the first step is that you need to understand what is your war room, right? So the working against results. This is where, again, where you self-sabotage, where you all the things, that one person that said that this, podcast isn't good or whatever.
Yeah.
All of that, right? Identifying it, right? Okay. So I typically with my clients, I have them write that down.
So everything that is going on negatively in their head, that's
what's the story?
War room.
Yeah. Okay. What's the story? I'm not smart enough. I don't have, we all have it.
Yeah.
Right. And I usually in my sessions, I share mine, right? Okay. My biggest one is not smart enough, obviously, because that's what I was told.
Yeah.
Right. So typically the things that you doubt yourself on are the things that other people say about you. And identifying that and knowing that those are not real. That's not real stories. Those are sort of historical things that you hold on to. But identifying what those are, if you don't identify them, you can't notice that that's where you are, because noticing is the first step, right? If you trying to figure out, okay, of every moment of the day, you're in one of two rooms in your head. You're either in the war room or you're in the win room.
Okay, so let's talk about the win room. So so the war room is this negative place where all these negative stories, badly painted pictures, whatever stigmas you put on yourself, whether it's other people or yourself, that's your war room. So how do you define, what's the framework to how do you help your clients figure out what their win room is? I think that might be
Yeah.
even harder to figure out than the war room, because the war room, you already hear it. You already
Yeah.
seen it.
Yeah.
So how does someone find the win room when they don't know what that even looks like? What does that
Right.
look like?
So it starts with you got to build it out, right? Because you can't get into the win room. This is why so many people are dissatisfied because
Yeah.
they haven't built it out, because they're either trying to, follow someone else's story,
Yeah.
someone else's version. So we start with understanding like what do you value, right? So I take people through a series of exercises, understanding what are your values? Like what are the things for me is courage. Courage is my number one core value, right? And so that for me, that means that I'm going to speak up even if I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'm going to be willing to try new things.
Yeah.
And if I don't know the answer, I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's my definition of courage. Now
That's
there's
the best definition of courage I've ever heard. Right? That's a good one.
but see how I just said that to you,
Yeah.
and we've talked a few times, but do you feel like you know me better now
I do.
that I just said that?
Yeah.
Right. So most people think they know what they value, but they actually don't. They don't have specific words and language to define
Exactly
who they are.
who they are.
Because if you
Okay.
don't have those anchoring points, remember I told you, for me, it was like, and this is why I look at it as a gift, is me losing feeling in my lower half of my body
Yeah.
was a representation that I was in an environment that I didn't know where I stood. I
Wow.
lost my foundation. I lost my footing.
Physically, you literally
Physically
wow.
lost my footing. And
Yeah.
so the body, there's like that book, The Body Keeps Score. I don't know if you've read that.
Heard
or
the title, but not familiar
Yeah.
with the book.
But that was what it was.
Yeah,
And I
wow.
realized that I needed to find my foundation. If I was going to move forward, I needed to figure this out. And these are
Yeah.
fundamental things, but we're not taught these.
We're not.
We are not taught these.
I
This is
know.
the opposite of what we're taught,
Yeah.
right? So when we think about building out our win room, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can't shift there if we haven't built it out. We don't have
Yeah,
anything to
yeah,
anchor
yeah.
in. All we can do, right? Most of us is anchor in the war room.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to anchor in the win room. We got to build it out. So we focus on your values, right? And then sort of what are those?
Okay.
How do you lean into them in every difficult conversation, in every difficult situation? And then figuring out what your strengths are,
Okay.
right? So there's
Yeah.
a lot of different ways you can figure out with different personality assessments. I usually use...
You believe in those, the personality assessments? Okay.
1000%.
'Cause I know there's a lot of people who say that's all crap. Some people say there's actual merit and value in those.
1000%.
Okay.
Because what it does is what we're trying to do is we're trying to find the words and language to be able to help you see you.
And that's a way where you can, there's like a thing that can quantify, okay, this is your personality. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that makes sense. Okay. That makes sense.
The data,
Yeah.
right? Because we need to see it. We are blinded by, so our brains are wired to focus on the things that we don't have and forget about the things we do. So the things that are your unique gifts, your strengths,
Yeah.
you actually don't see them, really.
Yeah.
Because they're easy for you, but you don't I know you and I are pretty similar, but
Yeah.
but there's things that you don't even realize that you're good at, that because it's easy for you.
Yeah.
But other people to get up and do a podcast, they'd be like, I could never do that.
Yeah.
You're like, how could you never do that? That's,
Yeah.
right? And so this thing, we tend to minimize the things that are our, what we're good at, our natural strengths. So what we're trying to do in the win room, right? In your win room, we're trying to elevate those, highlight them, so you can communicate them more effectively.
Okay.
Right?
So I have an interesting thought, though. Don't mean to interrupt you, but so one thing I noticed is that when it comes to the war room, I really want to see what you think of this. I love this concept because when you think about the war room, right, and you're mentioning how a lot of it is outside negative thoughts, whether it's social media, whether it's people that have said words about you, whatever it is, those are outside thoughts that are kind of put on you negatively, which is like your war room. But your win room is positive thoughts. So, but what it sounds like is no matter what, you're going to get thoughts and everything's painted for you from the outside. So even if you have positive feedback, so let's say you're telling me I'm good at something, like a strength. Am I still supposed to value your assessment of my strengths? Or is that invalid because I'm supposed to invalidate the negative opinions? So is that why the personality test is better than someone else's opinion because it's like objective and non-related? I'm curious because, again, if we're saying to eliminate the negative opinions, how are we can in the same breath accept the positive opinions? So where do we actually draw that positive reflection from? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and again, part of it is like the data, right? So you want to see the data. People are very predictable if you know what to look for. And that's like a whole nother conversation. But essentially, like if we were sitting here having a session around how to decode your buyer or decode the person you're talking with, like immediately how I do this with my clients, is teaching them how do you learn how to communicate, maximize that ROI, that return on interactions. How do I understand what you need to hear in a conversation so that we're gonna build rapport, build trust. Right. So you're going to, it's a practice of listening for people's listening. So when you seek feedback from people, right? So you're going to get the data, right? So you're going to get the data from that assessment. You're going to have your own view of what you value, what you stand for, what you believe are your strengths. You're going to reach out potentially to people that you work with, right? This is an exercise I have a whole team of people doing right now. It's like reach out to 6 people and say, hey, I'm doing some professional development work. You know, I value your opinion. What are the first 3 words you'd use to describe working with me?
Okay.
Right? You get all that data back. Right?
Yeah.
And then what we're doing is we're looking at that and going, okay, what are the
general
themes?
Consensus? Yeah.
Right. What's the general consensus? Helping us to see ourselves. How do we want to show up with others, and anchoring in that, right? Like, how are we defining who we are?
Yeah.
Instead of sort of what we're not.
Okay. So that's interesting to me, because this kind of leads into the whole idea of your Moneyball leadership, which I'm excited to talk about, because what you're kind of saying there is figuring out who we are. And I think what you talked about earlier too is people not realizing how certain things are outdated and how we're not taught certain things. So the whole idea, I guess, of Moneyball leadership, which we're going to get into, which is, a title of that your book, which is coming out, is the idea of outdated understanding versus new understanding and new tactics. And you work with all these clients, so it seems like, you must have an understanding of what works now. Clearly you do. So the understanding of human nature you have, I think, is really strong. So that goes into leadership, right? So what I'm curious about now is to learn a bit more about what is Moneyball leadership? What is this idea of old, outdated leadership? And how does this play into, again, this whole idea of human nature that we're understanding about ourselves right now in this conversation?
Yeah. And did I answer your question before around the framework? Did that make sense? Or did it give you enough to understand it?
Yeah, I think let me give
this
you.
This is me rechecking with you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
I can tend to go on, and then I'm like, wait, did it make sense? Because I acknowledge that sometimes talking about this can make someone's brain hurt a little bit initially.
It makes my brain, it stimulates it though.
Yeah, but it's because, a lot of what we're taught and sort of how we think is, what I'm trying to do with people is to help them think about their thinking. Right? Thinking about your thinking. And if you think about your thinking and notice like where you are, which is one of the most effective tools in performance, in how you show up, how you are, how you feel about yourself.
Yeah, thinking about your thinking. Okay.
Right? It's like how you're thinking about, how are you aware of how you're thinking?
Yeah, I think when you mentioned the frameworks, I think I understood. I think in my whole idea was, obviously in the most blatant terms, it's good and bad, but how do you figure out what your bad is and what your good is? And my main takeaway is that the bad is just the negative picture you paint for yourself and what you're comparing yourself to.
Right.
That's your war room. What is like the negative? What's the bad, like the bad voices that they don't really exist. Where like that's a dark place you can go to when you are stressed, having those feelings, when you feel like you're not doing it for you. The win room is actually understanding yourself and knowing, okay, this is what I need. That's inherently what it stands for. Right. But it's actually understanding, okay, like this will inherently make me feel whether it's passionate or of value or whatever that is, but just positive.
Right.
And you figure that out through a lot. Again, it's not like an overnight switch, but truly understanding yourself through these personality tests, through positive feedback, and I guess overall positive general consensus. Still a place where you can go to feel better.
Yeah, and I want to be careful about saying positive, because the reality is, like, I'm not sitting here saying, well, I want you to be positive all the time.
Yeah.
No, that is not a realistic way. I mean, we're wired for worry. We're wired, right? But it's more about, what are your goals, right? What do you value? Where do you want to go in your career? Like I said, the number one thing I when I coach younger professionals is like, they don't know what they should be doing, and sort of feeling like they have to have it all figured out. And the reality is, I don't care how successful anybody is. I will tell you right now, nobody has it figured out.
Yeah.
And if they tell you that, and there's nobody that does not. Everybody has a war room.
Yeah, of course.
All right. but they might tell you they don't, so they're lying.
Yeah, they're lying. Yeah.
They're lying. But my point around this win room concept is it's less about like all about positive. It's more about what do I want? What do I believe in?
Like being on your course.
It is you. This is dropping the 80%, right?
Mm-hmm.
The 80% that you think you need to be.
Yeah.
And holding on to the 20% that is that is you.
Yeah.
But this is where it's opposite. Is we're taught, we're all sort of, usually our 20% is buried
in that 80%.
under the 80% of crap that we think we've been told we're supposed to do. And the judgment we put on ourselves for not maybe thinking we want that course. But a lot of us follow a course, a path that we think we're supposed to take.
That's drawn out for us that we didn't draw ourselves.
Right. Yeah. Based off of what society tells you you're supposed to be, or where you're supposed to, how you're supposed to look, or what title you're supposed to have, or what kind of occupation.
So for example, again, even hearing that, so let's say you're a student right now, you're just graduating college, you're somewhere in that age range. How does someone, again, we're not going to say brainwashed by society, but in a way brainwashed, how do you almost figure out your own path? Like, how do you actually figure out your own path?
You just start. Like, there's no wrong first job. There's no wrong way.
Yeah.
What you're looking for is, I first started, I wanted to get into sports. I was an athlete. I worked for Major League Soccer. I worked with the Patriots. I worked for NBC. I tried to do this is in college.
Okay.
I did internships. And I was like, I'm going to get into sports. Like, I want to do sports.
That's why we're the same person.
Right, we talked about this, right?
Yeah, my stuff's
and I was
all
like, that's
too.
my thing. Like, I'm going to do that. And it was like, I don't know. But there wasn't really any money initially in that and the schedules and stuff. And so then I got this this other opportunity.
Yeah.
But what I realized is like, it didn't matter like where I started. It was more about, what am I learning? What am I learning about what I like? What am I learning about what I don't like? Right?
And where am I going?
Well, yeah, but it's more of like, what are you leaning into? Figuring out. Right. What are you choosing to do? What are you moving towards? What are the things you like? You like to do?
Yeah.
Because we want to have you doing more of the things that you like to do, that you're interested in. What are the things you're curious about?
Yep.
And that's where we're different. Like, it's everybody's different. So some people, as they would like anchor in, I always kind of use this as an example, is some people love to work in spreadsheets.
Yeah.
All day. Like, and I'm like, I can't think of something that makes me want to poke my eyeballs out more.
I'm the same way.
But this is the thing, is acknowledging that there are people that are
different. Everybody's different.
And that's the power of it, is like, how do we take the people? And this is when I work with teams, is like, I'm trying to find the thing that is you're really good at, and the thing that the other person is really good at, and the other person is really good at. And how do I bring you all
to be the best team possible?
Correct. And so that sort of like thinking about how you bring people together, you can't have everybody that's the same.
So if you had a soccer team of 11 goalkeepers, it's going to be the worst soccer team ever. But if you have a striker who can score a goal, you have wingers that can pass the ball, defenders that can defend, it creates that system where it all works together to be successful.
And
based on their strengths.
You got it. And they all see what their role is, and they see what they bring to the table.
Yeah, and they know that they're valued for that role.
Correct. Yeah. They know it, and they embody it, and then from there, then you can grow and you expand upon, where you want to go. But oftentimes, what happens is, traditional leadership is more like minimizing.
Yeah.
Let's
talk about that. What is traditional leadership, and I'm curious what your take is on that.
Well, traditional leadership, I sort of say, is a lot of ways that leaders have that they lead, if we want to call it leading, because I say, you could have the title leader, but you're really not leading if people aren't listening.
Yeah, facts.
Right? If people aren't following you, you're not leading.
You're not a leader, yeah.
So, I mean, I think Simon Sinek talks about this, but it's the person who's leading is the person that people are following, not necessarily the person with the title.
Yeah.
Right? And so when it comes to leading people, you have to understand how people work. So traditional leadership has been probably for the last, 30 years, right? Sort of do what I say.
Yeah.
Follow the steps, And it's really anchored more in fear and control. And when you think about what happens when you put fear in people and you control them, try to control them.
They kind of they kind of freeze up. They kind of like shut off. Not shut off, but I'd say they kind of, they feel they, I actually want to give you a good answer. So if, let's say someone's being controlling and fearful, you actually will become fearful and feel like you're not going to be yourself. That's what I think of when I hear that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no wrong answer to
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But when you think about fear and control, it shuts people down.
Exactly. Yes.
So when you try to control people and you sort of put the fear in them, are they more productive or less productive?
Well, I think, from what I've been told, I think it can work both ways. But I don't know if there's a right. I guess there's a right and a wrong. But I think, for example, it's like if you point a gun to someone's head, you scare the hell out of them and tell them to do something, they're going to do it.
Right.
Right. If you fear someone enough to the chance of them being fired, there's a chance they live up to the occasion. But there's also a chance if you push someone's right buttons and you motivate them in a positive way, that can get the same result. But I do think, I'm not saying one works better, but it's tricky.
Right. Everybody's different.
Yeah.
Some people are motivated by a kick in the ass. And other people are motivated by a pat in the back.
Yeah.
But if you give a kick in the ass to the person that needs a pat in the back, you lose money.
Yeah.
Right? And so this is why understanding how people are driven. And sort of when we think about traditional leadership styles, there's it's like a one way. This is the way we do it. This is how I want it done. And when organizations now are struggling because they're not getting the productivity or sort of getting the success out of their people, it's because they don't understand how to pull the strength and how to motivate their individuals, because they're really using sort of a one size fits all
for everyone. So if you don't succeed with this, then it's your fault. That's how you're taught to feel.
Right. I always think about, so my son's he's a baseball player and a basketball player. But I remember when he was little, and kids do this, like they have these ways of sort of getting you to focus and do something that you know what fuse beads are?
No.
They're like these teeny tiny little beads that you put into a like on a thing, and like you create a pattern with it, and then you put all these little beads like with a tweezer.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people that are listening to this, they probably do know what it is.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna look it up after.
I'm gonna look
They're
it up.
called
Yeah,
fuse beads, right? And it's actually a really good way to sort of calm your nervous system. But I always think about this because my son's a big Yankees fan.
Okay.
And so he wanted me to make all these Yankee players, with these fuse beads.
These little beads.
These tiny little beads.
Yeah.
So it was like literally spending forever
Hours.
creating these. And I'm you're gonna remind me to send you like a
need
video of it.
I need a picture of it.
There's a reason why I'm saying this. So he had me like create all these guys. And so I was like, oh, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to speed it up. And I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna like do like 3 of them at the same time and try to do it at the same time.
Yeah.
And when I did that, because then the final part of it is you put the thing on it and you iron it, and it makes like the thing. And it's got all the names on it.
Yeah.
So when I went from trying to do it individually, like one little player, and then I tried to like do 3 or 4 at the same time, they all got destroyed. And I remember taking a video of it, thinking to myself, this is why when we try to sort of give everybody the same playbook,
one size fits all.
One size fits all, this is why it doesn't work. Right? Because people don't, this is what I hear from people all the time, right? People don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they don't feel valued.
Yeah.
And part of that is, number one, it's not necessarily the organization's fault. It's sort of a shared responsibility. Like you can't feel seen and valued and heard unless you understand what you value.
And how you want to be seen.
How do you want to be seen?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's sort of it's a shared responsibility. But that I think is just now the way that with social media, with the way that everybody sort of is sort of trying to feel seen, everybody's trying like seen on social or thinks that they're going to be the next superstar or whatever. But really what people are deeply just looking for is to be able to see, what are they, like, who are they? What do they care about? How do they define who they are?
Yeah.
And
that's interesting to me because when you say that, my mind goes back to my first job after school. So then I was at LinkedIn. There's a lot. It was like, again, I've had internships over the summer, so I've had interns. One thing we were connected over is that our first like major internship was both for sports teams. So in the MLS. So you were for the New England Revolution, and I was for DC United. So we both started literally working like the exact same job, 20 years apart in the same industry, which I think is really crazy how that happened. But
Did you like do the halftime shows and stuff?
yeah, so I did that. I did all the promotion stuff for my athletic department. So I would go to every game,
Yep.
all the promotional
And
events.
like throw the gun with the t-shirts and
we'd have like the smoke screens, like
Yeah,
pull the smoke, literally everything. Like we were
It's the
all
same
of it.
thing. Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
For free, unpaid. But hey, that's how you get experience.
Right.
So I had a lot of small internships like that, right? And then my first real job was at LinkedIn, and that was the first time where I had a manager fully like committed to me and that was the first time I really had that experience, right? And it was very interesting because it was a rotational program. So my first 3 months, I had this one manager, Jared. Loved him. Again, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but again, if it felt understood, we connected. Second rotation I had was in recruiting. So I was actually a recruiter doing the first round interview for product managers at LinkedIn. So I was doing that. A manager there, she was amazing too. Then I went to my full-time role after my promotion from that rotational program into my full-time role as a BDR. And I loved him. I learned a lot from him. His name is Caleb. But it was a really tricky relationship because the way he is that he's a very old school traditional style leader. He played college athletics, very like I wouldn't describe it as like very McMahon's man, like motivate, tough guy.
Yeah.
And that again, so I played sports growing up, but it was like it felt like a blast from the past. It's been a while since I've been around a character like that. It was interesting. So for me, I learned very quickly. I thought at the beginning I was gonna like love it. We're gonna have the best relationship ever, and it was interesting because I would see how you were saying it's not one size fits all, and he made it very personalized, right? So our team was very diverse. We had people from all different backgrounds, races, religions, sexualities, everything, and I was at the time the only athletic or traditional male. That's the role I played in the team, or at least demographic wise. And the way I felt I was led was like I was the outlet for like that old traditional style of leadership, and for some reason, whatever it was, I did not I would hit over my quota and it wasn't good enough. I would be compared to my other teammates, and I'm like, I'm doing just as good, and it became this whole style of like,
never enough.
Never enough. Like, how do I handle this? Like, what am I doing wrong? And I felt I was like, it was this whole thing, right? And that was basically my first, not negative, I think it wasn't negative, it was a learning experience. And I think so many people that now probably are experiencing that in their first jobs, which is why I'm curious for you, because you said it's a shared responsibility. That's why I'm bringing this up. Because when it comes to that, I'm sure I could have done things better, which of course self-accountability is important. But if someone watching at home who's going to go into their first job, who's in it right now, how do they make sure that their leadership, because they're going to be led. They're not going to be leader off rip, right? When you're young, you're going to be led by someone. How can you, in your best case, try to make that a good relationship? Because I think for me, I didn't know how to. It was hard, and I learned again by doing.
Right.
But what's advice you have to give to the actual person on the team, not the leader?
Yeah. So I always say too is that all of us, we're all either leadering. That maybe I'm creating a new word. Leadering.
That could be the second book.
That'd be the leadering.
Leadering. Jaime Diglio.
Yeah. We're all either leading or following, right? At any point. So if we're sitting here right now, and when we're talking about sales success or understanding behavioral psychology, I'm leading. If we started talking about podcasts and around, I don't know, working at LinkedIn or recruiting, you'd be leading. I'd be following, right? And so it's sort of this reciprocation and understanding. So when I think about, as a young person, and I think we learn so much from our leaders, we learn some of the best lessons we learn are from the worst leaders we have. Facts, right?
That's straight up facts.
That is like, so you look at it as, oh, this is interesting. What is this person, what's their, really trying to understand where this person's coming from. And, often when this is like a lesson that I tell my kids too, is when people are really angry, like, and they yell, maybe you have a leader who yells a lot. And, it's really a representation of their struggle.
Yeah.
it actually rarely has anything to do with you. It's their inability to understand, how, manage stress.
Yeah.
I think the number one thing is to be able to, if you're not in that leadership position, but you're the person that is the leader is saying something like, are you, the thing that motivates me most is.
Okay.
I just want you to know, the thing that motivates the most is when you give me feedback specific to, our
Whatever we're working.
whatever
yeah.
we're
You're
working on.
yeah.
I really like feedback, and being intentional about sharing that back with your leader, and then saying to your leader, what do you value the most, right? And then so really you're trying to understand specifically what drives this person.
Yeah.
And so the more because people will always be like, well, how do I know what motivates my people? I'm like,
Yeah.
ask them.
Yeah.
Just ask them.
Yeah.
Right? Like getting them to understand themselves is like, this is like the most powerful, like life hack, success hack is really understanding yourself and like what motivates you and what drives you and like what puts you in the war room, what puts you in the win room.
Yeah.
But, sort of taking responsibility for, all right, well, what am I going to learn from this situation? How do I understand what, ask the leader, what are some things that you, appreciate about your top performers? When you've had the best people on your team, what is it that they've done specifically?
Yeah.
Like really getting curious and trying to understand like what that leader needs. And another hack, I guess you say hack. I don't like to say hacks.
Hacks are good.
I know hacks are good, but
it's a trendy new way of saying this is the sauce. So this is the secret.
So one of the things you can do, really anybody can do in any meeting, with your boss or with a client
like
or
a
anyone.
One-on-one meeting.
Right, any one-on-one meeting, is at the end of the meeting you could say, was this meeting valuable? Was this meeting effective? And they say, oh yeah, it was great. And you say, awesome, I value your opinion. What was most helpful about this meeting? What was most valuable about this meeting? Or what stood out?
Yeah.
And so that you would think that would be something that a leader would ask. A leader should probably ask that.
Okay.
But anybody can say it. You could be the person on the team that you're having a one-on-one with your leader, and and you could say, was there anything specific that I said or that stood out that was most helpful in this meeting?
Yeah.
And so what you do is you ask it, and they might be surprised.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the key here is, right, we want you to be memorable. Right? How do we make you stand out?
Yeah.
And so when you ask that question, you then get an answer, hopefully, and they might say, well, let me think about it, and they get back to you. Worst case is they're like, oh, I don't know, it's just great. They might just go, oh, it's good, whatever. But at least you it's getting the practice of asking that.
They now know that you're on a different thinking level.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Now, in fairness, your leader might not be like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
they
make them all right. Your direct manager.
Good leaders, bad leaders.
Right. But so then that leader they might say, oh, well, I like that, you had, a set agenda and that you were, gave me transparency on where we're at with these things. So then you write it down. So then the next time you meet with a leader, you say, I really know you value transparency. And so I want to make sure that you know these things. So you're continuing to use that leader's language.
Yeah.
Because what we're doing in the win room process, right, is we're helping everyone, not just leaders, everyone to build out their leadership language. That's why I call it your leadership language. This is your language that's yours, right? It's your, again, your combination of your values, your strengths, what you stand for, what you keep, that's that foundation you keep coming back to. And I always say is that, that's where when you do have you're in a difficult leadership position or dealing with a difficult leader, it's very easy to get pulled into, the story they're saying about you.
Yeah.
And why we do all this pre-work of sort of reminding you of the things you're good at, what people value in working with you.
Yeah.
Like all of these things is because you have got to remind yourself of all this other stuff, your compounded interest that is in, right, to go to versus this one scenario where you have maybe this one leader who doesn't see
you X, Y, Z.
Right. And so it's like, all right, do I believe that? Maybe there was feedback there that I should, it's a learning moment.
Yeah. So if you're a student or you're going to go into your first job or you're in your job right now, what you really should do is like the hack or like an advice that you're trying to really say is something that you can actually tangibly go and do is say, understand exactly what they value, and then use that language in the next following conversations, because then it can, I guess, obviously it'll impress them and you can connect more, but I think the whole idea is it'll actually bring you two together to be on the same page, whereas maybe you're on different pages to start off with.
Correct. And then because you're sharing, if you share what motivates you, or another thing, if you do that exercise of reaching out to people and saying, hey, what do you I value your feedback, what are some words you'd use to describe working with me?
Yeah.
When you're talking with people like your boss or potential clients, or with potential at an interview, you can say, well, people who work with me say they really appreciate my openness to new ideas, right? So you're using that person's words about you to then share with people about your words.
And that self-awareness, I'm sure, can help you in a lot of times when you're in those job interviews and things like that, because now you actually know, because you know your own story, it's easier to talk about things you've done and who you are to someone who's like a manager or an interviewer or a potential recruiter, things like that.
Correct. And that's, again, that anchoring. So we want you to, that foundational footing of who you are, what you value, what your strengths are, the direction you're going in, being clear about that. Like, that's what we're doing, is really giving that. I mean, this should be taught. This should be taught in college.
Yeah, it should be taught.
It should be taught in high school.
High school, college, summers, everything. Parents, everything.
I know. And I always say, as sort of people that go through my programs, I'm always like, you're going to learn everything that you need to know to be successful in your career, but nobody ever told you.
Yeah.
And so none of this stuff is talked about. But I've taken all of my learning and practice from being in, working with people, understanding what is really holding them back. It's not a lack of skills. Most often, it's not skills.
Okay, so what is it?
It's confidence in believing that they can achieve.
Yeah.
Right? So oftentimes...
Self-value.
Yeah, self-value. So you can have all the skills, but if you don't have the mindset and if you don't have the willingness, right? Or you can have the mindset, not the skills, but everybody focuses so much on getting more and more and more, right? Ever meet these people that just keep going back to school and getting more certifications?
Yeah, they have like 45, they have like 5 degrees, all these certifications.
Right.
And then it's like, well, what are you doing? I never understood it personally. I thought it was like, you're degree hunting.
Well, I mean, and again, it's not that it's a wrong thing,
but not wrong.
My point around, we continue to sort of, our world right now, it's run on, oh, you need this, but no, you need this, to be happy, you need this to be happy, you need this to be happy, and then you're like, oh, I have all this, and now I'm
still
like,
not happy.
I'm still not happy.
Are you familiar, I know you're into sports, are you familiar with Kevin Durant? So he's my favorite basketball player in history. Like, he's my favorite player growing up. I have his jersey in my room. I'm a Nets fan, and we joined the Nets, one of the best days of my life. It was amazing. But one thing that was always weird to me, because I think I understood this moment then, was he never won a championship with his first NBA team, the Oklahoma City Thunder. They got to the finals. They lost to LeBron James. He had a tough time. He ended up leaving. And him leaving was a really big deal. Since LeBron, the biggest player to move. He went to the team that just lost in the championship round, who actually just beat his team, to the Golden State Warriors. He goes to the Golden State Warriors, the best team in basketball, coming off their best season they've had. And he wins the championship and his finals MVP. And the first thing he says is, this doesn't change anything. I feel like this was supposed to be this life-defining moment for me, and nothing changed. And I think a lot of people have this moment. Even myself, I go, I get this job at LinkedIn, and I remember I called my mom, my brother, my dad first, and when I got the call, I'm like, let's go, I got my first job, I'm accepted this, we're going to do this, XYZ. And I go there and I work there for a little bit, and then I'm sitting there like, wait, I'm actually not as satisfied. So I think this is a thing that most people actually feel with, and I think those things always change. It's like, okay, this is maybe what I'm told will make me happy, or this is supposed to make me happy, but it's not.
Right, and part of it is because we now have the ability to see everything about what everybody else is doing, and we're seeing that we're not seeing the full story. We're seeing that it looks so. This, like, actual things don't make you happy. But we're taught that things make us happy.
The experiences, I feel like feeling, right?
Well, it's the journey.
What do you think, the journey?
It's about doing, feeling like you're doing what you're supposed to do. I mean, I make more money now. I am more satisfied in everything that I do now because I'm doing what I was meant to do. But it took a while.
So if you were 22 years old all over again,
Yeah.
what would you do? I'm curious. Now that you know everything that you've known,
I wouldn't.
if you were to rewrite your life, you were writing a playbook to life. Like, let's say you're writing a new book, Jamie's playbook to life, or Jamie's book note to my 22-year-old self.
Yeah.
What are you saying?
Well, and this is another thing, I work with my clients on, you have to have a mantra, right? People talk about mantras, whatever, but it's like legit, like how are you, know yourself, trust yourself, believe in yourself, be yourself. Know yourself, trust yourself, be yourself. I always say this.
Okay, so know yourself, be yourself.
Know yourself, trust yourself.
Know yourself, trust yourself.
Be yourself.
Be yourself.
Believe in yourself.
Be yourself. Okay.
We have the answers. We just have learned to listen more to everybody else than we have learned to listen to ourselves.
Okay. So
maybe that wasn't an answer.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious. Like, with that mindset, now you have that mindset, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious for like tangible steps. I think the most valuable thing is now at this point, if someone's watching this episode, right? They're like, oh my God, Jamie has life down. Like, she clearly knows something that, well, not, on a general basis, like she has a clear understanding of, like, at least the mind, of like the human mind. Mm-hmm. And they're probably, okay, well, now how can I actually turn this into tangible steps where I can, like, do something about it? Because I think, again, people who are going to make in life right now, we're in the summertime. So people are going into their last years of college, their new jobs, their new promotions. I have a friend who got promoted to his new job. My brother is starting his new job. I know some of my interns that I have on the team, they're starting their next years of college. Yeah. So everyone's going to their new next big thing. So, but I'm sure sometimes it can be confusing on how to navigate it. It's the unknown.
Oh yeah.
So if you're, again, I think you're going back to when you're 22. You're back to when you're 22, Jamie. Yeah. What are you doing? How are you not rewriting your path, but how are you approaching life now if you could start it all over, 22 years old?
Yeah. So I really wouldn't change anything because I think I had to go through what I needed to go through to be where I am today. And I think that is, everybody's got it. Like, I feel like everybody has a journey. And I think more of like looking at everything that you're doing is more of like a research experiment. Right? Like every situation you're in and saying, okay, well, what am I learning from this? What is it that, what's the lesson? Journaling, right? Writing it down.
I tried that. It's so hard though.
I don't mean like what you see, like, like Oprah journaling, like, it looks so great or whatever. I don't do that. Yeah. But I have an app I use, Day One app. I mean, and I will like just jot down things that I think and I write them down, and like it does it. So what's cool is you can, like, because I've been doing it now since 2016. So I have, I have, how many years is that? 8 years of journal entries. So I can like look at today and I can look back to 8 years ago and what I was thinking.
Have you?
Oh yeah.
And what's that like?
What you find is that, I mean, what is it? Like, I think it's like 80 or 90% of our thoughts, right? Well, 80 to 90%, don't quote me on this, but it's around this generally, it's scientific. But it's generally like, I think 85 to 90% of our thoughts each day are negative. Okay. I can see that. And like 90% of them are the same. Like the same. So we have the same thoughts every day. Pretty much. And they're the negative thoughts. Yeah. I'm not saying my journal is all full of negative stuff, but it's sort of this you keep circling around and starting to see themes. So what I like about it is you can see what you noticed, right? And so as early in your career, it's like, okay, what are the things that I'm noticed that I like? What I don't like. Yeah. Right? It's like you might not know what you want, but you know what you don't want. So being able to define that and writing it down somewhere, right? What do I want? Not really sure yet. I know I don't want this. Okay. That's it. So that is, I wish that I had been more intentional about that earlier and leaned more into my curiosity, and not, like I went to business school. I mean, I I think it was like the story I had was like, oh, I knew I was going to go into business. I didn't know what business
Yeah,
was or
business.
But I think just, starting and paying attention to what are the things I'm drawn to? Who are the people that I'm drawn to?
Yeah.
And then like not being so worried about making the wrong next step. Because what happens is if we are afraid to we don't want to make the wrong next step. So oftentimes we don't do it.
Okay. Yeah.
And we're sort of frozen in fear.
Yeah.
We need to just take action. What do you learn from it? Go to the next.
That's how you grow inherently.
Well, right. Because you're sort of taught, oh, I'm going to take this career path. I'm going to go here and I'm going to go do. And I'm like, if you look at my career path, I mean, it's like all over the place.
Zigzag, up, down, left, right. Yeah.
I mean, like I told you, I lost my first job. I went back, I became a bartender. I went to grad school. I then got my job at Gartner, working behind the bar, basically looking for a job, and got someone to take a chance on me. Got my job at Gartner. I started in events, working in events. I was like, well, I think I'm really interested in sales. I convinced them to hire me as the first person that ever in sales there that they didn't have a sales background in field sales.
That's crazy.
That's the underdog piece, right?
Yeah.
Sort of that theme.
Yeah.
But it's like I went, I was in a role. I went from a manager. This is another point I want to make. At that point, I went for a manager title and went and decided to shift into sale. I was in a marketing role, in a manager role.
Marketing manager.
And I said, you know what? I'm really interested in sales.
Yeah.
I want to try sales. And I went to like another title that was way lower.
That was lower. You took a step down.
I took a step down to go, and it wasn't about the title. It was about the skill. So when we're thinking about our careers, how do we think about what's that next thing and what's the skill, the additive skill or learning that I'm going to get?
It's like what actually helps me more, having a nicer title and something that maybe is not growing me,
right?
Or actually learning something that can get me to where I want to go next.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's something that's funny because our last podcast, actually said something very similar. He said where he is right now, the reason he's successful is because he didn't look at the things that were objectively ways to measure success. So like when you're young and you want experience, people look at it as like, oh, I need, like, money is the way of success, right? It's like, oh, $100,000 job in New York will always be better than a $50,000 job in Pittsburgh. And he was saying, no, I just did what I wanted to do to learn, to grow, to network, to be around different things.
Right.
And that's, I think, what you're saying is that the objective measures of success are not going to be what gets you to where you want to go. And I think that's a big thing. Yeah, I mean, that's also credit to you for being able to do that. I think that takes a lot of inner strength, and like it's got to be a tough decision to make.
Well, remember how I think I said, it's like when you're in it, it's like, now looking back, it's like, well, it all makes sense. But when I was in it, it was sort of like, all right, I'm just kind of following what my interest is. Yeah. So as I got older and, I sort of, all right, well, how do I want to lean into this? I didn't know necessarily where it was going to go. Yeah. But I was like, I think sales, I didn't really get into sales. Yeah. The irony is I didn't get into sales to get into sales. Yeah. I got into sales because I thought I wanted to be a chief marketing officer at one point. And I was in marketing and I knew I couldn't be a chief marketing officer if I didn't understand sales. So it's like, I need to go, like, think of that from that range standpoint. How do I go over here and learn a skill? Because that's how I feel like the more well-rounded and you can understand how everything connects, the more effective. Yeah. I mean, and that's also just how my brain works. But I just think like not, leaning into what you're interested in. And that was one of the biggest things that I did when I started building out these programs where after I sort of realized that I didn't know who I was. Yeah. Was I had all my teams. I started practicing this with my teams at Gartner and at Microsoft. And I would say, I'd say every Monday, I want you to come in with an article that you're interested in. Okay. Find an article you're interested in. It doesn't have to do with anything other than something you're interested in. Okay. And you're gonna bring it and we're gonna talk about it. Cool. And why we did this is because what happens is our career, like as we start to be heads down, like you said, too, is like everything was work. Yeah. And you just get so tunnel vision.
You start to hate it too because it's like that.
And well, the thing is like you lose when you are so focused on just that, you lose everything else. That is the thing that actually
makes you. Yeah,
makes you interesting. Special. Yeah. Why are people going to want to, like, what are you,
the reason I hired you was because you came across a certain way. And then if you become something different because of the way it is, and you're inherently not the same person that they brought on anyway.
Exactly. And this is why because the things that I now do for teams and companies is helping to bring out the best in them. But the traditional way is basically just sort of making it this one way, and it's limiting.
Figure it out.
It's lowering the ability. It's taking people that are above average and making them below average.
Damn.
Because they're making them average.
Yeah.
Right? Do as they say.
Yeah, it just de-escalates you based on what you're good at. That makes sense.
Well, right. I mean, how many times I'm sure that you've felt this way is like you have a great idea and nobody wants to hear it.
Yeah,
so
like
what do you do?
Yeah, like one thing for me when you're saying this is it reminds me because my experience is as you could probably tell, I love talking to people. I love I'm a yapper, as they say.
Right.
You can't be a podcast host if you're not a yapper.
Yeah.
But I've always loved the whole element of communication. For me, I was someone who didn't love to be in the books with the spreadsheets, as we were talking about earlier. I like to be in the field talking to people. Like you, again, it's so weird how we're aligned because I also, from Maryland Athletics, started in marketing. And where did I go to? I was like, I want to go into sales. So I started being in sales. You, another similarity is that you worked for Gartner, then Microsoft. 3 other companies I interviewed while I was recruiting at LinkedIn was Gartner, was Microsoft, and was Salesforce. So this is funny how you mentioned those companies.
Yeah.
Weird connections we have here with these companies.
Yeah.
But basically what the point I'm trying to make is that when I think about how, like these opportunities are and the way you think about yourself in different roles, I think it's very easy to not to like lose yourself when you're in that space. So even like for me, at LinkedIn, I was someone who our whole sales process was all email based. And all my strengths are conversation based.
Right.
And I would always tell my manager, he was again the whole, not always one size fits all in certain ways, but
this is how we do it.
The approach was the way, like, this is our cadence. This is how we're going to do our cadence. It's going to be all through email. Like, this is our first step, second step on day 4, this step, day 7, this step, whatever it was, right? And I was like, I would love to call. I want to call. I want to cold call. Like, I don't know. That's what my experience was in. And it was just like, when I was shot down, the flame. I'm like, well, this is my strength. I'm still going to do what this email, I'll still do it, but I want to add my own thing. This is why you guys brought me on. This is why I have expertise in this. I was like, how am I supposed to get brought on for a reason and not do that? So yeah, it's interesting how you mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's again, it's tapping into, and it's not for everybody. I mean, some of the organizations that are so big and they're just like, this is how we do it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things, I'll share this because I think it's important for your audience, is there's really 3, I call it like there's 3 buckets. I don't know if I told you this when we talked before. There's 3 buckets of companies or sort of roles.
Okay.
So the first bucket is like the figure it out role.
Okay.
We want you to come in and figure it out. Like, we don't have a process. Like, we don't have a sales team. We don't have marketing collateral. We want you to just come in and figure it out, create it.
Okay.
Right? Certain people do very, very well in that. Right? They can build something from scratch. They can design a whole new way to do things. That figure it out. Right? Okay. Certain personalities. Right? You and I think, a lot of times it's startups, those types of, or group, or company, or sort of spin outs of different innovation within an existing company.
More vision-based people. People are creatives.
Right, they're creatives, right? And so we just want you to come and figure it out.
Yeah.
You create what's next. So that's the first, right? And knowing, are you a figure-it-out person? Do you like that? The second bucket is the fix-it bucket. So we already kind of have a system, but it's not scaling. Like, we have a sales process, but it's not. We're not hitting our numbers. We need to take what you have and we need you to fix it. We need you to like take it to the next level, right? So then there's like fix it people. So that's something that is, do you like to go in and sort of iterate and change? Hyper-efficient size something. Yeah, just like, and how do you figure out, you're already doing something, but what can you do to change it? Might be something small to now like really make the growth, right? And then, so that's the figure it out. I'm sorry, the fix it. So figure it out, fix it. Like, I operate really well on like the figure it out and fix it.
Okay.
That's like, again, a mid-size and then a startup, the fix it. So then the third bucket is the follow the effing process bucket. Okay. And so that's for people
That's crazy. That's funny. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. I'm not going to swear, but
No, you can.
yeah, that's
don't
fine.
worry. Okay.
If my kids watch it, they'll be like,
Yeah,
Mom.
yeah.
So this is just follow the process, right?
Yeah.
You're coming in. We already know the right way to do it. You come in and you follow our process. Okay. So that's very different. So now as you're thinking about this, you could probably think about in different environments you've worked in and on people, right?
Yeah.
And so if you are a figure it out person and you're hired in a follow the process, not going to work.
Nope.
Or if you are somebody who's a figure it out person who works in an organization, like this is what happened to me. I'm going to say happened to me. It is what I've learned. I was in Gartner and I was there from the figure it out stage all the way to figured it out. I created the process, right?
Yeah.
And then they scaled to
massive.
Right. Then it became like, this is
the process.
This is follow it.
Yeah.
So if you're somebody that's over here and then you're like, wait a minute.
How did I end up here?
And you start to think to yourself, well, why is this not working? Like,
Yeah.
And so for a lot of people too, so that's, if you're stay throughout stay at the stage of a high growth company.
Yeah.
But we start to think it's us, but it's actually not. It's just that we're not the right person for the right bucket.
To the right, but yeah, we're not, yeah.
So there are a lot of people that want to go in a lot of these companies that are, bigger and they have a training process, and that's really good, following a process.
Yeah.
But you have to know that there are these other options.
I never even thought of that concept before. That's such a good concept to think about things.
Well, and the only reason why I know this
is
because everything I'm telling you is like I went through myself. I have practiced it. I have experienced it with other people. And I've worked with so many people in their careers where they're like, I don't understand why this isn't working. And I'm like, oh, you're in the wrong bucket.
Yeah.
Or what you need is in a different bucket. And that's not, you need to either find that in your existing organization or you need to find a place where you can fulfill that thing you're really good at.
I've never thought of companies that way. That just makes different roles. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of now that I've just shared it with you. So it's like figuring out your right bucket, and there's no right or wrong one. It's just where do you thrive? Yeah. And in your career, you can learn from all the different and that's why for me intentionally, knowing that I would be doing this type of work, I purposely I've worked in I've worked in the big mid-sized companies, I've worked in the big companies, I've worked with startups.
You are a startup.
I am a startup and I've worked in startups. And so I understand how things work in these different ones. So that's why for me, I design my career intentionally that way. There's a reason why I went from Gartner to Microsoft and then I went and started my own business and then I went into a consulting business. And then, so I did it purposely so I could
see a little bit of everything
because I wanted to know how do I, what's different. What's different in a company that's, selling research services? What's in a SaaS, in a technology provider, in a consulting, and sort of just figuring out oh, okay, what do I like? What do I not like? And now being able to be relevant in that's sort of that concept of range.
You really built the perfect picture. I don't know how somehow you managed to do all these different experiences and you really tied them, you tied it up perfectly somehow, which I think is really impressive, which is really credit to you for doing that.
Well, it was intentional. It was intentional when I realized that the thing that I was going to be, when I realized that the thing that I wanted to be doing was helping people in how to navigate and perform, at their highest potential in these different environments. So I could only be reputable and be able to
credibility in those things.
Right. How can I talk about, I know what it's like to be in your shoes if I haven't been in your shoes. And I think for a lot of people who are out there as consultants or trainers, they've been doing that for so long and they don't really, they don't really look at, holistically, they haven't been in the trenches. Yeah. And so that's why for me, I'm really intentional specifically from a range of working with younger professionals. Right. Even with my kids, what are the things that they're coming to me for and thinking about, okay, what's the differences and how do we help connect and bridge this sort of divide from a leader, for what you all in your age range, what do you need? What do the leaders today need, right? Because often what the leaders today think you guys need is not what you need.
What you actually need,
It's not. And what you guys are starving for, right? They're blind to it.
So what do you think the average young adult needs right now?
I think average young adult needs coaching, right? Coaching on their
In what sense?
coaching in terms of figuring out who they are,
Okay.
right? Anchoring in who they are, being able to see their strengths, helping them to frame what a sort of a career path could
Okay.
be. I always say there's no like career fairy out there saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, here you go." Like,
Yeah.
and even if the company was to have a career path for you, that's a one size fits all career path
Yeah.
that might not be a fit for you.
It's not perfectly tailored to you.
So this is about tailoring everything. It's not like people get so scared. It's like, oh, we can't customize everything for everybody. I'm like, yeah, you can, because it's you,
Yeah.
right? But nobody ever asks you. But if you're clear in who you are,
Yeah.
right? And then you feel like you have, a path, you're creating a path, you're designing it, and you're sort of co-creating it with your leader, perhaps,
Yeah.
right? You tell them, this is the direction I want to go.
I love that you mentioned this so this is funny that you mentioned this because I'm currently right now, so obviously, we're Growth Street here, so we're doing. This summer, we started our first internship program. So we actually have 10 interns. Shout out Aditya behind the camera. I know we don't have the view. He's smiling back there. But he's one of our interns. And I think what you mentioned earlier was that you learn how to lead from the worst leaders. So you don't kind of want to be that bad leader. So something that I'm working on too is trying to be a good leader, right? So one thing that I love that you said that I connect with is I actually am proud of myself because of what you said. Is that I told everyone in my one-on-ones with them, I say, I want you to come to me with your most selfish goals written down. Like what in a perfect world do you want this experience to be, and like where do you want to be, and I don't want to hear you say like, oh, I want to grow this company to this size, or I want
Right.
to. No, I want you to be objectively selfish with what your goals are. Then I say to them, even to all my clients in career development, I say my goals are your goals, and I think if you do that, then it motivates them to do a lot to one, grow themselves, but they're also knowing that they're on a personalized learning path,
Right.
which I think is really powerful because then it benefits them, and then we're getting to benefit from them because they're going to put in great work and quality, and then
Right.
the relationship is clear. Now it's like I'm clearly looking at you, like I want you to succeed, and if because for me, my manager, I think it was a lot about hitting numbers at the time on LinkedIn, because we're a big sales company, it's kind of I get it,
Yeah.
but now where I am is like, I think if you know your manager inherently wants your success and whatever
Right.
your success is, you trust them more,
Yep.
and it creates it's that new leadership wave where I'm just glad you said that because I feel like that's what I'm doing now. So
Yeah.
hearing that I'm kind of on the right path in a way
Right.
is a nice feeling.
Yeah. I mean, and that, I think, again, like I want to, knowing who's listening to this, right,
Yeah.
is that, most, and I talk about this in the book, because the book is geared, I mean, it's for anybody, but really geared towards leaders that they're not happy
Yeah.
with where they're at, and they're trying to figure out why, and it's because they're trying to lead in a sort of one size fits all versus really who they are, which is the key, right, to uncovering their hidden talent from that Moneyball concept of like, what's the thing uniquely that you bring to the table.
Yeah.
But I think, so for most leaders, I say it's like, it's not their fault. Like most people that are in leadership positions today were taught by the people before them how to lead people. And because they're sort of just, that's all they know. They haven't been taught a different way. So they just keep doing the same things that they were sort of taught in terms of, do this or else, control, right? Managing through a process, but not looking at the individual. And people today, I mean, we're in everything we want personalized.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We live in a world where we want everything
like-
personalized.
Your phone, Instagram, TikTok, all that,
Right.
all those algorithms are literally created to create personalized content for you.
Correct. But
Yeah.
again, we have more technology to connect us
Yeah.
than ever before, and people are more empty and alone than ever before.
Yeah, interesting.
There's not
The
sort
depth.
of the depth and the interaction. So
Yeah.
what my aim is with working with people is to help them really remove everything, like we talked about, that 80%,
Yeah.
hold on to the 20. And when you can show up as you,
Yeah. But that's how you can connect more with people.
Well, that's that sort of, I talk about it as like the new ROI.
Yeah.
Right?
Not return on investment, return on
interactions.
Yeah.
So how are you making money in every conversation? And so it's that compounded interest. You and I have a conversation, right? And I'm really intentional about how am I connecting with you? How am I really understanding what you care about? Taking a moment to ask those simple questions. You're going to go.
So how can someone do that? Like, let's say that whether you're a CEO, whether you're
Yeah.
a student, what's a way someone can actually do this? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like when I hear you say it, it sounds like a hard concept to do.
Right.
Which, on the
It's
outside, at
not,
least.
so it's not hard. It's a little uncomfortable.
Okay.
Because it's different.
Yeah.
But the key is we want you to show up, right? We want you to be memorable. So,
Yeah.
so many of us are taught to be predictable, but that's not going to get us anywhere.
Yeah.
We need to be memorable first,
Okay.
right? So how do you be memorable? And memorable can be with any of your interns, right? So we could use you as an example, and your or any of your listeners, you know, and they're with their colleagues.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, I've been doing. You could say, you know, I've been doing some, you know, personal development. You know, I'm trying to think about, you know, what really motivates me, or what do I really value?
Yeah.
I'm curious, like what motivates you? What, you know, what do you value? And ask them.
And then now you've made money on that interaction because now you know that person better. So if you wanted to interact or not get something out of them, but do something together with them or somehow work with them, you actually know them more than you would have without
Right.
it.
And how many people ask you what you're motivated by?
Zero. Zero.
Right?
Yeah.
Or, you know, hey, we just had this, you know, we had this conversation. Like, you know,
Yeah.
was this a good conversation?
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, yeah, it was good. I'm like, all right, cool. What
Yeah,
did
I
I?
hope so, right? You'd hope
Yeah,
so.
yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think it would probably be good. Most people are gonna say, yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
if I let's just do it right now, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, so you know, we, you know, I'm just curious, like, what is it that motivates you?
What motivates me, I think number one is feeling like I am fulfilling my potential. That's what motivates me.
And what, that's pretty cool. And what do you
Yeah.
like when you think about like your potential? Like, what would you? How would you?
I
would
think
you
my
define that?
potential is like really. I think I have genuinely a chance. Like be. I don't know. Again, it's fluid. I don't know what be something means, but I think I can be something that be someone who has actual impact and do a lot. Obviously for people in my life, but for like real people. And I don't know on the scale what that would look like, but I'm not in my mind meant to be. Or I think I'm potential of being more than the average, not like the average person, but live an average life, do average things, have average impact. I think I'm capable of way more than that. So that is what I think my motivation is, not being normal or average.
Right, leaning into the things that make you different.
Yeah.
And like, what would you say are the things that make you different?
I think one, my personality. I think,
What about it?
what about my personality? It's funny. I think I'm funny. No, okay. I think everyone always says I'm very like confident. I think that's something I always hear.
Yeah.
I think I always hear people say that I'm very what you see is what you get. So people will either really like me off of my first interaction or have some weird negative opinion where like he's too much or something. So I think what makes me is maybe my authenticity. I would say authenticity and confidence are the two things I would say.
So
and my charisma, because I'm funny. No, I'm
yeah,
kidding, I'm kidding.
yeah. I mean, well, and then and other people are not.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
there's more people that are more
Yeah.
like-
More, reserved.
reserved, and that's where we need to know too. We can sometimes be a little overbearing, and we have to be like, listen,
course, yeah.
sometimes I can be a little too much, and so just check
like
me.
in a
and-
quiet room, you don't
like
be
if
the
you
loud,
have
you don't
a-
be like the one who's always talking. It's
Right.
something I learned.
So for you to be able to say, why do I do this?
Yeah.
Well, because I want to be more than, I want to be more than average, and to me, it's more being more specific than that is sort of using using your gifts, right? Like how are you going to use your gifts of really being able to connect with people and help them to, bring out the best in themselves.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more specific like that.
Yeah.
But in getting that language, right? Like, how do you say that? So then you can more quickly say that to people. So they're, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Right.
I see why people book times with you. I see why,
Well,
I
because
feel like I'm
it's
in this like this is cool.
because stuff we don't like. We say
don't
these
talk about
things,
it.
but
We
we
don't
don't
talk about
actually
it,
give
yeah.
it meaning.
Yeah.
And so it's just words. If you don't give it meaning, right? The same way where I said, my core value is courage.
Courage, yep.
Right. And I was like, well, what I mean by courage, because anybody listening could have a different definition of courage.
Yeah.
My own courage, right? Like, why do I do what I do?
Why do
right?
you do what you do?
I do what I do because
Well, I gotta put the reverse.
yeah,
down
no,
now.
I love it. No, I love it. You know, it's funny. I like your initial question. Now I'm like, wait, there was something else I was going to say, but I'm sure it will come back to me with your initial question. Why do I do what I do? Because I believe that people get stuck in stories of what other people like believe that they can be, and they forget that they're the ones that get to decide. And so I look at it as a way to help people tap into their uniqueness, their hidden value, and really be a voice for others. Because I'm somebody that, you know, I'm no different than anybody else. Like I've had plenty of war room moments. I literally define the war room, right? And I think it's just helping people to see that story, whether whoever told it to us, right? That's somebody else's story. It doesn't have to be ours. We get to create our own story. And for me, the impact that I'm able to, like, I have this one person that I've been working with probably for 5 months, and, you know, younger in career, like maybe like late 20s.
Okay.
And was kind of one of those personalities that would be taken advantage of. Very good at what she does. Yeah. But would kind of get taken advantage of and sort of walked over.
More passive.
A little bit, right? But like really good with clients and yeah, right. And it was clear that she was getting taken advantage of. And so working with her to really identify, like, what do you want? Yeah. What are you going to do, right? And how are you going to take ownership of your life and your career so that this doesn't keep happening? Yeah. And I am telling you to watch this person, the transformation in her, just by helping her to anchor in who she is and giving her a little bit of confidence to see beyond what her story was. What her picture is, it's like night and day. Yeah. And to me, that's so fulfilling because not only and this is why it's like, yes, personally, she's in a way better spot, but professionally, so her performance increases. And this is why, you know, when I'm talking with people, I'm like, you know, the best hack for how to get better, you know, get better performance, better sales numbers, better whatever out of your people is to help them here. Yeah. It's here. Yeah, not the tangible skills. Not that let's give them another training on this or this or this. Yeah, give them another sales training. No, you're basically, this is about teaching the person how do they think, how are they thinking at every moment? How do you get them? Because they're in the war room, they're losing money. They're in the win room, they're making money. And so why I do this is because, again, this is the thing nobody talks about. Yeah. But it is the biggest limitation that we have on ourselves, right? And learning how to, whether you're, you know, taking personal accountability for, hey, this is how I'm going to lead my life. And I'm not going to spend my whole career being miserable in, you know, kind of stuck in, you know, thinking. In the ways that it's drawn around you. Well, right. And oftentimes we think, too, leaving a job is going to change it. Yeah. It's like wherever you go, there you are. Yeah. Like it's still the same. You're still going to keep repeating what you don't repair. Because you also attract that. Whatever you are, like you're just going to naturally fall into that same role when you go to the next place. Right. Which is exactly, So it's creating intentional practices for yourself about, wait, what am I doing? Why? Being very intentional. I call it your real AI. Yeah. I talk about this in the talk, but your real AI, which everybody's talking about AI, right? So this wouldn't be a cool podcast if we don't talk about AI. But when I talk about your AI, it's your aim and your intention. So your aim and your intention in everything you do. So you can hear what I'm saying and you can hear it however you want, but my intention in sharing it with you is, right? Sort of, so it's this being very intentional and aware of why you're doing what you're doing is quite powerful. And do you think everything that someone's doing should have that all the time? I don't think that I don't think that's realistic. Yeah. I think back to the point of how do you notice when you're spinning, right? And you feel the stress. In your war room. You wouldn't know until we had this conversation. You'd be like, I don't know, I'm just stressed. This is life. Which is me a lot. Right. But you're like, all right, well, I catch myself, and this is what my clients tell me, right? Because it's like they catch themselves. They're like, that's what I'm doing. Yeah. And they're like, all right, so nope, that's not what I want. What do I want? Yeah. Right? That's not what I want. Okay, I get to choose. Do I want to feel this way? No. Okay, shift it. It's a reframe, right? You're reframing how you're thinking about your thinking. But you're built because you built it out, and nobody teaches us to build this out. This is what I do with people. I teach them to build it out. All the things that make you, right? That you make you unique and different, but nobody really ever focuses on. And nobody can really I mean, they can tell you what they experience with you, but it's sort of, this is not something that people are taught.
Talking about, That's why I love this. That's why I think, again, this conversation for me is like, I feel so present. I feel like all these podcast conversations I have are all super unique and super informative. And that's why I love this, what I do. I tell this all the time is I get to have the conversations that I love to watch. I get to actually have them. And I actually feel so present. Even you saying this, it's like I'm so like present in this because you're actually making, again, you're making me think about thinking, about how I think, which you have to be present inherently to think about your thinking.
Right.
So,
if you're unaware, right?
Yeah.
If you're the awareness is the first step.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I think again, this is crazy though. I think this is again why I can see why you have so many clients, and why you do what you do, because I'm sure people have this interaction with you. It makes them go like, yeah, this is good.
Well, and initially, I mean, I think for some people, I realize what we're talking about is quite uncommon.
Yeah.
And that's why it works.
Yeah.
Because it's the thing, right? And so this is why, when people, my clients tell me, it's like, this is like the secret formula for their success. This is why everyone that goes through my programs, they crush their quotas.
It helps out,
they hit their goals. They get the promotions. They get the raises, whatever. And it's really about taking personal accountability, right? I mean, think about it. You have a person for everything in your life, right? I mean, maybe you're no, I mean, it depends on what age you're at or whatever, but I say, it's like we sort of are taught that we're supposed to figure it out by ourselves.
Yeah.
But the reality is, like, we all need coaches. We need people to help us along the way, especially when it comes to our career. It's like the number one thing other than family, right? Is like your career, and what are you doing in your career? And like most people like just suffer in silence.
Yeah.
And they're like struggle with it. And it's like, you don't need to struggle. It's sort of talking it through and figuring out, okay, well, what do you want, versus sitting and feeling dissatisfied about where you're at, or ashamed of where you're in your career, because
so having your own team.
I call it your win team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the people that I go through my programs, right? Like they all get to know
Jamie, I'm going to add you to my win team.
All right. It's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely.
This is really cool. I feel like, again, obviously when we talk for the first time, we have all of our similarities. Oddly, all the companies and the styles.
I know.
Weird. Like that's like really one of one. But then to again hear how like I think we're both, again, you talk about we're create it. What was it? The three buckets. It was create it, fix it.
Figure it out, fix it.
Yeah, I feel like we're both a little figure it out and a little bit of fix it people.
Fix it. Yeah.
I feel like I'm in the same boat there. So
yeah,
this is really amazing, and I think again, this conversation is so good. That's why we kind of want to shift it to more of like a fun activity we always do. That's fun segment that we have. We call it the Growth Streak Minute. So it's really just a bunch of quick, fast questions where I've asked my audience to, ask things that they're curious about you, from sharing your LinkedIn profile, things about yourself, and things that I'm curious about, and things like that. So it's gonna be really fun, things like that. So number one thing is, I see you came here wearing today the Air Maxes. We're actually wearing Nike Air Maxes today.
Yes.
So favorite way to dress, favorite style of clothing.
Well, first off, can I just tell you that these sneakers my kids bought for me because they said my sneaker game. Right. My sneaker game was outdated the same way, right? Like leaders need to look at their sneaker game, right? They need to,
Moneyball kicks.
Moneyball kicks. Yeah. Favorite way to dress. I mean, honestly, like just
professional hoodie.
No,
I'm like, a big hoodie and sweatpants guy. That's why.
Yeah. No, I'm usually like doing games and stuff and athletic stuff with my kids. So
it's favorite sport then?
To play or to watch?
Both.
To play basketball.
Okay.
To watch.
Don't say baseball, please. I know that your kids can't say watch.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just a big sports. We were just saying how the Michael Jordan. What was it?
The Last Dance.
Oh my God! Like, and I've watched it the whole series like three times. I'm just like, so anything. I watch anything that's sports related. We just rewatched Air too, which was so good.
Yeah, I'm gonna rewatch it probably now because you said it, because I love that movie.
It was on the other night, and I'm like, I love this movie, and just I love the sort of how we share the similar. Like, you see something, right? It's like, I have my biggest gift is like I see when I can see the potential in people that they can't see, and like that's what I loved about that. Like Matt Damon, he could see that. He saw it ahead, and he could see what others couldn't see.
Yeah, and that's so. I'm gonna stop admitting this because again, you say that, and again, I connect because, again, the last guest I had on, I was really talking to him about the most valuable thing, the biggest gift in life you can have is someone seeing more potential in you than you can see in yourself.
Yep.
And yeah, you say that, and that's your gift. That's why I think probably people who are in your circle probably love having you in their circle because you can see potential in those people. So that's really cool you have that.
And the reason that I do that though is because I've had people throughout my career who saw the potential in me.
Yeah.
Right.
So it just keeps moving it forward.
It's you do that when this is why when someone does that for you, you then pay it forward, right?
So you want to also inherently.
Because and again, that's how that compounded interest, right? And how you want to grow your career. If you're intentional and you show up with people and you ask them thoughtful questions like we talked about, something like what motivates you, what do you care about, what do you drives you? They remember that, right? Because you have a different conversation, a different interaction, right? And you do that over and over and over again, not because you want to like anything other than you want to have a true connection, which is what people are so thirsty for
to have,
because they're not having them. They're not having them, and so it makes you stand out because you're being more intentional. And part of what you're doing here, right? You're creating a space for people to learn and be able to connect with the messages.
Yeah, I'm glad. I mean, I think even for me, I think everyone, the nice live audience in the back with Shanti, I think like we probably already feel a connection to you because it's your authenticity in our conversation. So I think that the more open you are about yourself, and I think that's what's going to happen.
Right.
So that's what leads me to my next thing. My next question is, favorite project or moment in your professional career? Like favorite moment you've had when it comes to like.
Oh God.
You can't do like any family or like life stuff, but like professional favorite moment.
Favorite moment. Oh, geez, that's really hard. I mean, I would say that the TED Talk was because I was sharing something that was very vulnerable about my story. That I felt that I needed other people to hear because the way that I want people to feel less alone. Right. Nobody talks about the real deal. Right. The real.
The real.
That I think that was my favorite because, just growing up as like a shy kid and somebody who did not want to raise their hand to speak up, right? Like
that's like shocking to me that you'd be like that. That's
but this
crazy.
is why I think it's so good for
Evolution.
younger people to hear this is because it's sort of, I don't speak today because I'm comfortable. I speak because I feel like what you said in the beginning is I feel like I have messages that I want to make sure people need to hear. So I'm going to choose courage over comfort. Right. And I forced myself to get out and talk because I felt this deep need to share my experiences and what I've learned so that others don't repeat. I really would like other people not to repeat, getting stuck in the war room and having to go through
and living the life there.
And, some people the issue I had was with my legs. Other people have heart attacks. Other people have chronic migraines. Other people, all kinds of disease and things. And, I mean, that's not what we're here talking about, but it's sort of like, how are you taking care of you? And this is where it all starts.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. And then I love that. I think, again, going to the next one is when you talk about you being this figure and you choosing comfort over courage over comfort. I love that saying.
Yeah.
So what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received or given to someone else? That you really, that just resonates with you, like the best piece of advice
that I've received.
Yeah.
It's funny. I just asked. I just did a session with 80 people last week, and I asked them all what's the best piece of advice they got. I think just trusting your intuition.
Yeah.
I feel like I could probably have trusting yourself and learning to trust yourself. I think is one of the hardest things. And this I'm going to share this quote because it really resonates. Is the bravest thing, I need to figure out who said it, but it's the bravest thing in the world is to be yourself in a world that is trying to make you like everybody else. Right? So being yourself
Yeah.
when everybody's pulling you towards all the things you should be.
It's like staying rooted on your course, staying on the path.
Right, which comes back to the foundation, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
this
yeah.
is this is the life hack. We're
Yeah.
taught. We just went full circle in this
Yeah,
whole
seriously, I
conversation
know.
because
It's
they sort of
crazy.
you're taught this path, but the real path is trying to figure out what we're all here to do something.
Yeah.
And that's something, it doesn't have to be something flashy or right. But if
What's you? Do what's you.
it's rooted in what gives you energy.
Life fulfillment.
That's one of the hacks, right? Like figure out what is the thing that you do. And as you're going through your career and different things you're doing, what's the thing that you could really like focus in on, all day long. And,
What can you do for free? What would you do for free?
right. And that for me is like coaching people.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Yeah.
like that when you lean into that, like, I mean, I'm, coaching people all the time, whether it's in group coaching, individual, but the supporting of people in a way that they hadn't had before, that's what gives me, what gives me.
You that, yeah.
But I had to go through all those other experiences to figure out of those, what was the thing in there that I was enjoying the most.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me lead to my next question is we've all had mentors, we've all learned this advice from people. Like right now, I'm learning so much from you. My last question for you is, who is one person in your life that you really look to as your role model? Who's been the most inspirational figure to you? I think everyone thinks about one or two people that really had a big role on them.
Yeah.
And it could be, for me, it can get emotional. So I'm curious for you, like, who are the people in your life, or the one person, or maybe whoever it is that really has led you, maybe helped you out the most and down this path and inspired you to be who you are today?
Oh gosh, and that's really hard. I mean, it's hard to say just one person.
One person, yeah.
I always say my mom, because she started her own business when I was the oldest of three, and she started her own business when my dad was sick, and we were all really young, and she took a chance and and did that. So she's always been she's been an inspiration for me in sort of saying, hey, I could go out and do create my own business. My husband also, he's a teacher and he is a coach. He's a track and cross country coach. Right. So like we're a coach family.
Yeah.
But he is someone who, cause he coaches male, I'm a big believer. I think I told you this is sort of, I work with a lot of women, but I work with a lot of guys too.
Yeah.
And so I'm a big believer. I have a son and a daughter, and how do we figure out how to get more diverse, right? When I say diverse, it's not just gender, but just in general, different mindset, different, how do we all work better together?
Yeah.
But my husband is a men's, a girls and boys coach. So he coaches both.
Yeah.
So I learned so much.
For what?
For track and cross country.
Gotcha. Okay.
And he's in a small town, but he's created like a legacy, like state championship over championship over champion.
Wow.
Oh yeah. I think he's got like 13 or something.
Coach Diglio.
Coach Diggs. Yeah.
Coach Diggs.
So I've learned so much from him, and just like his journey working, because all adults are is big kids.
Yeah.
Right. And the maturity, like just because you're older doesn't mean that you're more mature.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's all the same problems. And so I've learned so much, like looking at him and how he manages and coaches and coaching men and women differently.
Yeah.
Is a real powerful, sort of understanding of what people need.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say my husband, my mom, and oh my gosh, there's so many. Like, I'm a big Brene Brown fan. I don't know if you know who she is. Brene Brown.
Brene Brown, no, I'm not
Okay,
familiar.
so everybody here needs to go and watch her TED Talk.
Okay.
After they watch mine.
Just go watch her TED Talk, everyone. Go
From
watch
War
it.
Room to Win Room. Brene Brown, she talks, she calls herself a researcher storyteller. So she's by like trade, she is a researcher and a psychologist. But she did this like viral TED Talk, which I think is one of the top ones ever on shame and vulnerability. So she researches shame and vulnerability and leadership. And so a lot of leaders will talk. I had this recently actually, where they wanted me to come talk to them about, mindset and positivity, but they didn't want me to talk about the negative.
Stuff. Yeah.
I'm like, you can't have
the positive without the negative.
Right. So they want you to talk about bravery, but they don't want you to talk about fear. And you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
And so this sort of, so she's somebody that I'm also very, has been very motivating for me, because when I think about what is it about her, is that she speaks up even when she's uncomfortable, right? And she sort of, does it for the greater good. And so I look at that is And that's why oftentimes you get this is another hack. I keep talking hacks.
Yeah.
I feel like I have not too many, but if you don't necessarily know, when you're kind of at a point where you're like, I don't really know what to do, think about a person you admire, right? And if you think about that person you admire and why you admire them, like, can you think of that person right now?
Yeah.
Who?
My dad.
Okay. Why do you admire him?
Because he can do anything. I feel like
He can do anything.
he's strong. He can get pushed to anything.
So typically, like if we were to have done if we literally
went
went through a values exercise,
Yeah.
right? And we narrowed down your core value, right?
Okay.
And like sort of worked through that.
Yeah.
Typically the person that you admire the most, and they typically share the same values,
Okay.
right? And so the reason why it's good to know that is when you're in a situation where you're stuck in the war room or you don't know what to do, thinking you would be like, what would dad do? And so for you in any moment to say, all right, and trust that that's going to be aligned to your value system, that makes it easier for you to make that decision and know that it's aligned with who you are.
Even if you think you're different, if like, let's say like, I'm just saying, like, not devil's advocate, but I'm curious, right? Like the person that you look up to, but if you think you're still different from them, you should still do what you think they would do.
Well, it's the person, because you said that you admire him.
Admire, yes.
And so you said he can do everything, but there's probably something if we were to
Well, of
to
course, we
drill down,
unpack it. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, like, I don't want to like put you on the spot,
No, I don't care.
but it's like, is there
podcast.
something specific that he does that makes you like a specific?
I think sacrifice. He's willing to sacrifice to get what he wants to do for himself, but for the people he cares about. That's what I would say.
Okay. Audience, does that sound familiar?
You familiar? Yeah.
So my point is that even though you're different than your dad, that part about him is there's an alignment there.
Yeah.
And so my point is that when you kind of don't know, when you're at a crossroads and you don't know what to do next, sometimes it can be overwhelming to think, well, what should I do here?
Yeah.
Instead, to anchor it on, what would your dad do in this situation? What do you think? How
to push through a moment.
Absolutely. To help you push through and sort of know that it's going, because again, it's about alignment and clarity.
Yeah.
Right? We want you, foundation and people, the more you're continuing to talk about who you are, and give it language, right? The more people are going to then understand more about you.
Yeah.
Right? So these words that you say, right? So now if somebody was like, what's the deal with Jamie? You'd probably be able to much more easily than before this conversation.
Oh my God, yeah.
You'd say, well, she's all about courage, courage over comfort.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I gave you the words.
Yeah.
So if you want to know you want people to
associate you with you can create your environment to actually associate you with your chosen language.
You got it. That's your leadership language. But
Dang.
The only way you can't be invisible and discoverable at the same time. So you have to speak it.
You have to make it, you have to put it out there.
You have to put it out there, and then it becomes this consistency. Like, we didn't get into the neuroscience and all that stuff today, but like it's your basically
Part 2 we will, guys.
Right.
Part 2
You're embedding it in. You're embedding it in that person.
Yeah.
So now you have a way to describe more specifically about, who somebody is. You have it. You have the words immediately.
You know it. Yeah.
Whereas before you'd be like, I don't know, she's just cool.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
now you have something more specific, and I can know that is going to be aligned because I'm the one that gave it to you. Right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
So instead of sort of this uncertainty, like, we're creating clarity.
Your grasp of human nature is crazy, I feel like. It's like insane, I feel like. Wow.
It's competitive. This is everything I'm talking to you right now is competitive knowledge.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you think this way, you're able to perform better than anyone else.
Yeah,
because
it'll help you. This is extra gear that most people don't even know exists.
They don't even know exists. And it's like, it's a way, it's,
Damn.
And it's something that I had to figure out. I had the curse of knowledge because I sort of would think this way, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I had to
We had to figure out what.
I had to practice it so many times with people and be like, well, tell me. Like, I've kind of built my business backwards than I think a lot of other people. Like, I did all the practice, the years of practicing and building the programs, and then built the business.
Yeah.
But I was, throughout my career, for the last 9 years, I was building out, like, what is the thing that people need that they're not getting?
Yeah, and you're fulfilling that.
And helping them to get the thing that they need that's going to help them
get to where, what
because
their
it's
goal
the
is.
thing that I needed.
Yeah.
That I wasn't getting. I was working in all these companies
Yeah,
that had all this training,
Yeah.
but I wasn't getting
What you actually needed
to
from those
take my
trainings.
career, right, take my performance. And
Yeah.
when I saw that when I did this with people, their performance skyrockets.
Yeah, wow.
Because it's not common, and it's that big gaping
Yeah.
thing that people,
Well,
they don't
yeah.
even know that they
don't-
need it.
Yeah. It's the elephant in the room that they don't even see.
They don't even see it. It's a
Yeah.
blind spot because
Yeah.
it's not even,
A
they're not
massive one.
conscious of it.
Yeah.
Right? But how much you can control your future.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
You're in control.
I just want to say thank you because I feel like this whole podcast experience is crazy. I feel like it's all on a journey. I don't even know. It's crazy.
What did we talk about? Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
like,
no, like I think even so for me, I edit all the podcasts myself, and I looked at it when I first started doing it as like it's like a chore. It's like, why can't people just chop this up? It should be just made for everyone to see off rip.
Yeah.
But the best part I actually love about editing was I have to actually sit there and watch every single second of it and be present because I want the viewer to get the best experience. I'm gonna love watching this back. This is I feel like this is I don't know. This is crazy. This is so cool.
And again, it's sort of, I get the fact that, and I always say this to people, I'm like, maybe take a little Excedrin migraine, medicine, because it's sort of, I'm also trying to, I have the curse of knowledge in this. Do you know what the curse of knowledge is? Have you heard of that before?
It's like when you know so much, but
yes,
it's hard for people to get. You probably describe it better than me.
Yeah, no, you have have it. Sort of, you forget that what you know is what other people don't know.
Yeah, so
you take it for granted.
Yeah.
Right?
Even people should just know this, but I know, so you should know it. But
right, or just sort of, I try to remember that I'm I try to bring it back to the foundation of sort of
understanding.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Everything and is different than what I know. And it's and we didn't even get into this, but it's understanding. Remember I said about thinking, but it's also understanding that return on interactions is about.
Yeah, that was a cool concept I like talking about.
So there's right now you and I are having 3 sales conversations or 3. Let's take sales out of it. Okay. We didn't talk today about sales.
I know, which is crazy, right?
We can, but it's all the same. Everything is sales.
In our part 2, we will.
Life is sales. Every conversation is a sales conversation, whether people say they're in sales or not.
Interviews, your friends, you at the bar, whatever it is. Yeah, right. I agree.
So but right now, you and I are having 3 conversations.
We're having 3.
There's 3. There's 3 sales conversations. There's 3 conversations. So the first conversation is the one in my head. Okay. It's the thing that I'm thinking about, what I'm going to say.
Okay.
All right. I know your head's going to explode right now.
No, this is cool.
Okay. So the thing I'm thinking I'm going to say.
Okay.
And then the second conversation are the actual words I'm saying to you.
Okay.
All right. So that's because you know what you think you're going to say versus what you say.
They're different. They're different things.
Well,
they're the same, but I agree with you.
It's how you interpret your thoughts versus your words, right?
So
it's just sort of breaking it down. So I'm trying to break it down.
Yeah.
So what I think I'm going to say, and then I'm going to say it, but the third and the most powerful,
how they perceive it,
what you hear.
Yeah.
Right, because as I'm talking to you, what you're listening for and what the audience is listening for are different things.
Yeah.
So you're listening from your own background. Of your experiences, the things you need, right? Yeah. So this is what's so powerful when you're thinking about interacting with people. You're listening for their listening.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
Is sort of again, we didn't really get it. We didn't get into
weird, and it's weird because on a podcast, it adds a fourth. I'm thinking about it the way you described it. It's well, now I'm thinking the way I'm thinking, but then the person who's viewing it, I'm thinking about their.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But the power in that is, especially when you're trying to land a message, you're trying to connect with someone, you're trying to figure out what is the thing they need to hear. So if I'm in a sales conversation or I'm trying to get you to agree on something right? I got to try to figure out quickly, what is it that you are listening for?
What are you listening for?
And so the easiest way for me to say that or ask is what stood out in what we talked about today?
And then whatever they end up saying is what they naturally chose to listen to, because that's probably subconsciously what they were listening for to get out of the conversation.
Right. And I'm going to ask you, and then you're going to tell me, and I'm going to write it down.
So wait, so say that again. So you're gonna.
I'm saying, well, we could do
So
it right.
Yeah.
I'll say. So was this conversation? Did we have a help? Was this a good conversation today?
I'll say yes, it was.
Okay. Was there? I value your opinion. What what specifically was most helpful?
I think
what stood out?
What stood out to me was your understanding of the human nature and human thought, how people think, and then how that can be how that can be used in life, and also how this style of thinking and approach makes you very present. That's what stood out to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate your feedback on that.
Okay.
So I'm going to write that down.
So you write that down after ask. So you write down my answer to your question.
Right. Because there's a million things you could have said.
Yeah.
Right. It could have been
That's
about
what came to my mind
the hack
first.
about being in the war room. It could have been this, and this. But that's the first thing you said.
Came to my mind
that's
first,
what came to my mind about how breaking down that sort of thought process and sort of how can you, right? And so then I know that was the thing that resonated out of everything.
So for you to sell to me now, that's what you would sell to me.
I would say, I would be like, all right, I would lean into
that,
more of that. And so this is we're not talking about sales, but what are we taught? What are we taught? What's the first thing we're taught in sales? To focus on the problem.
Yeah.
The problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's find the problem.
Yeah.
And then we'll fill the product.
The pain points, yeah.
Right. And what I'm saying is that no. You don't focus on the problem. You focus on the person.
The person, yeah.
Because if you don't unlock the person,
they're not going to know.
They're not going to give you the real problem.
Yeah.
Right. And so understanding this and doing it in a very authentic and well-intended way.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, I'll be real. We could probably talk for another 3 hours.
I know.
I think who knows how these cameras are probably going to overheat and fall off the tripods. But,
how long have we been talking?
Over 2 hours.
No, we haven't.
I swear to God.
Seriously?
Yeah. Oh it's been 2 hours. She's looking at my brother in the background. It's been 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
And it was the fastest 2 hours maybe in my entire life.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
But I want to give you something now.
Okay, cool.
So just don't look over there because it's over there.
All right.
Real quick. Yeah, let's grab one. Let me get you something. Real quick. So, one of our I think every podcast guest we've had has been a special one. So, one of our previous podcast guests was also a CEO and founder. She look at the wall of fame right there. That's what we call it.
Oh, cool, yeah.
You're going to be added to that.
Okay.
She's the sixth picture. She's in the middle there. And she has her own company. Her name is Carly Stillwagon. Oh, let me get my mic, actually. Her name's Carly Stillwagon. She's the founder of Elite Custom Apparel. She's my age, went to my high school, and she's doing an awesome work.
Oh, cool.
These hats are some of her products that she created for us. So
yeah, cool.
She also created for us these amazing Growth Street t-shirts.
Oh, cool.
Really awesome quality, super soft.
Oh, yeah.
And
is that dry fit?
Yeah, I think
looks like very soft.
It's like my brother has an amazing gym shirt, and
it
feels like you can wear it any day. But
cool.
This is for you.
Thank you.
I think you brought me something which we showed before camera. She brought me a wind room bracelet to where if you feel like you're in your war room, you can actually snap it, and they'll bring you back to your wind room, your positive space. Now, whenever you want to wear this.
Awesome.
Make you feel soft. Remember the conversation that we had, I hope. And the bond that you're added to my win team now.
Okay, cool.
And this is I love it. My treaty to the contract.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, it's really soft. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Yeah. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah. And before we end this, I want you to have your opportunity to talk to the audience, to plug inFirst, to really shout out whoever you want to shout out. I know you have a book coming out. This is your minute to the camera.
Oh, gosh. Whoever I'm like, I would just say it's never been about me. It's never really been about me. It's about helping people to see their potential and see the value in themselves and and just trusting yourself. So yes, I do have a book coming out. But yeah, I mean, if this resonated with you, reach out to me. I mean, I work with all kinds of companies and all kinds of individuals. So yeah, I'd love to hear what resonated with you about what we talked about. I'm always looking for feedback on what people heard, right? So that I can then put more content out about that topic.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. Again, I have the curse of knowledge with this.
You think you know what's the most valuable, but you don't know what people think
Right.
is
Like
the most
that's
valuable.
the thing. And I know we kind of went through like a lot of different things here. And
so much.
part of it is like intentional, and part of it is just we just kind of went with I just went with where my brain went.
Yeah, exactly.
There wasn't really, we weren't scripted.
Yeah.
And that's what
Totally
I like.
unscripted,
Totally
yeah.
unscripted. But I think just hearing from you and what resonated, I love to hear people's stories about, their struggles or what they're trying to work through, and reach out to me.
Yeah.
Reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's the best way
Guys,
to get in touch with me.
Connect with her on LinkedIn. Go watch her TED Talk. Like
yeah.
that video. Comment on it. Connect with her.
Yes.
If you are a company or you are an individual who wants to develop and grow, I recommend going to inFirst. What's the website?
It's inFirst. Well, inFirst Consulting.
Yeah, inFirst is the name of the company. I really wanted to add this part into the podcast because I want everyone to know what Jamie's up to and how to connect with her and really grow yourself. So anyone at home who love this conversation, go to her LinkedIn, connect with it. inFirst Consulting is the name of her company. So shout out inFirst. And seriously, Jamie, I could not be more appreciative of you being here. I think for one, I got to learn so much. As I said, I don't think I've ever been this present in any of the conversations I've had before, because you put me on the spot, which I actually appreciated. And seriously, you're part of my dream now. Again, I'm so young and I have so much growing to do. But you being where you are now and talking about where you came from only inspires me to think about, oh my God, when I'm your age and I'm where you are, I'm gonna be the wisest person out there. So yeah, seriously, thank you so much. And I'm going to really be hitting you up more now about things, because I feel again, even you saying you're an older sibling, that's probably another reason why we connected. I'm an older sibling. So many little things you talk about, and I'm just Jamie's an older me. I don't know. I feel it's weird. It's weird. Being another life.
I know. It's funny, and I don't think of myself as old, but I think I'm kind of in between.
No, you're not old at all.
Yeah.
You're older than me though.
Right. Of course. Yes.
You're part of the Growth Street family now, and cool. I think everyone watching this is probably if you get to the end. I hope you guys enjoyed it. But again, go show Jamie all the love in the world. Really appreciate you coming on, and it was amazing. So
awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
it's great. Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. That's a wrap.
Cool.